You all speak beautifully. You're articulate, confident, intelligent men who have written books and are wonderful communicators. Should we, in general, assume that you guys got this covered? And as we're going to go home tonight, we want to do our stuff. We're very busy. Everyone's got stuff they got to do. They took time off this weekend. In general, should we assume that, okay, now there's a leader of this, you got this covered, and if we send a petition back now and then by email, then that's enough? Or is that not enough? And if it's not enough, what would be the exact 1 to 5 steps you would like us and anyone who ever sees us, what are the 1 to 5 action steps specifically, if we would listen to you, that you would exactly you'd want us to take?
Can I start briefly? Actually, sure. I think I'd like to summarize.
Sure.
Do you mind that?
Yep.
Just very briefly, I want to say to initiate that a response for that. You know, I've often said that that I initially thought maybe 20 years from now we will find 2 distinct groups of individuals in the world regarding food choice. One group will be aware, and they'll be consciously living their lives in a way to promote health in all aspects, because they'll be living a life based on a fully plant-based, organic plant-based diet. The second group will be unaware, either constrained by culture or simply won't care. I don't think that we can get away from that other type of group. I don't. That doesn't mean I'm not optimistic. I'm a realist as well. And I have some neighbors that I don't think will be in that group. some deer hunters back in Michigan. So anyway, so I think what's going to happen is that to understand this very well and to use this as somewhat of a platform base when you hear these gentlemen speak about this as well. But what's going to happen is that with these 2 distinct categories, we'll find that the first 20 years from now, I used to think it would take that long, but the first group of individuals, those conscientious, only eating plant-based foods, will no longer tolerate the ecological imposition placed on them by those that eat animals. Now, the difficulty is that we can't wait 20 years. And the future, what we've been essentially responsible for, saying we as a human species and we all in this room are part of that, is that while it's been on our watch, we've created these timelines that I've been talking about and that we discussed at least about the oceans here and a little bit about climate change, et cetera. We're responsible. It's happened in the last 50 years, essentially. I mean, it began happening maybe 100 years ago or so, but it's been escalated in the last 30 to 50 years. So it's been on our watch, and this is what we are then transferring to the next generation. So I feel it's our duty to change this. And so I feel whether we're talking about armies from a grassroots objective and force with enlightenment, empowerment, or it's a top-down approach, which we still, I think, have to advocate for that second group. There's going to have to be some type of taxation or coercion, and I think if nothing else, we need to then enlighten our policymakers and those with that type of a platform in order to create the environment for this second group of individuals. So my thought would be to do both.
Explain if we stopped subsidizing the meat, what would it cost?
Yeah, so very good point. You know, when I'm talking about, I mean, this is a very large topic, so the best I can do right now is probably to summarize it. But when we're talking about a top-down approach, we mean both to address and to advocate for there to be, if there's going to be any subsidies that is going to be provided by our government, it shouldn't be for animal-based agriculture, meaning fishing, dairy, or meat. Yeah, it should be entirely for plant-based agriculture, and there's a large topic about that in terms of just switching this around. It doesn't mean to take away subsidies. It means to subsidize those foods that are in the best interest of our planet and for our own health. So that's one approach. And the other approach is to be ambassadors for every single thing that you've heard all of the speakers discuss, and go out and discuss it in just the same vigor as we are doing it here, and empower all those around you, and then we can make this happen. So anyway, if that helps.
I think that there's some epidemics going on of thinking that are at the basis of these problems. Within the scientific and corporate communities, they call it reductionist thinking, which is basically putting blinders on. Within these boundaries, something looks okay. Or in the area where where someone feels appropriate to address, then they can ignore everything on this side and everything on this side, and then incrementally do something, take a step, take an action, discover something. That reductionist thinking is also part of the thinking of genetic engineering, which sees, a gene and a protein, and there's two things that molecular biologists don't know. One is molecules, the other is biology. They don't understand the holistic nature. And the training of scientists these days, and the way training occurs in the United States, for example, is also very much within these boundaries. So and then corporations, of course, they externalize the risks to others, and again, it's a kind of a narrowing. Now, a similar type of boundary is an epidemic where people believe that it's someone else's responsibility, they're handling it, and they're doing a good enough job. This is how it works at the FDA. The FDA says Monsanto will determine if the foods are safe. Someone is handling it, and they're doing a good enough job. When I go to developing countries or any country, they say, we don't have to worry about it because the FDA is handling it. I went to a plant breeder in South Africa who bred sugarcane, and he did a contract for Monsanto to create a genetically modified sugarcane. It was successful, but they buried it because there was no market. And I said, so you do the selection and choose the right strain, and they do the health evaluation. He goes, that's right. I said, so you take 350,000 plants down to one, and they do the long-term animal feeding studies and the human clinical trials. He goes, that's right. I said, they don't. He was suffering from that epidemic that someone else must be handling it, and they must be doing a good enough job. What's happening in the country is on the state level, they're now going after labeling. On the county level, they're banning GM plantings in different counties. And on the individual level is where it's most critical. So this, I think, is the big gift that I'd like to share. And that is, when you think about all of these things that have been presented today and yesterday, what would life be like for you if you took the boundaries down that said someone else is taking care of it and they must be doing a good job, and said, okay, I will take responsibility. Now, the challenge is that doesn't mean you're going to take responsibility for the whole thing, and the other challenge is that you don't want the angst, the anxiety, the suffering, the guilt, the panic that comes when some people think of all these things. So it's that suffering that often keeps those boundaries up. I don't want to think about it, it's too depressing. Someone else will think about it. So the first challenge, and this is the first of the 5, because you said do 5 things, and that is find that place in you where you can take responsibility for your actions, and beyond that, take responsibility in a generous-hearted, generous-minded way of the earth, and do it not feeling like a victim, but feeling like a victor. Do it in such a way that you feel more empowered and stronger, standing up to say, I will help cure this world. Do it in such a way that you become bigger-hearted rather than constricted. This is the first thing, because this will give us the power individually to say, okay, I'm an Earth citizen. What do I need to do? The second step is, what do I need to do? And that really is a self-inventory. Because as you've been listening today and as you'll listen in the future with these boundaries down, something is going to ring out there and ring inside of you. Someone asked me today, I'm a fine artist. What do I do about GMOs? And I wanted to spend time with her and ask her the questions so that it came out of her. Because it's not a cookie-cutter answer. If you're a healthcare practitioner, if you're a school teacher, if you're a member of the media, if you're a writer, if you're into social media, the answer is completely different. But if you take out the boundaries first and say, okay, bring it on, I'm going to make a difference, and then you listen inside and say, how do I make a difference? How does my network and my community and my footprint make a difference? That becomes the guiding principle for everything else. So that's the second piece. And then within that, you'll find your passion. And your passion becomes contagious. And that's something you should hold on to as a powerful tool. So when I teach, as I've taught 1,000 people to speak on GMOs, I first say, just tell your neighbor about GMOs. I'm not going to give you any story in the beginning, just speak for a minute. And then I say, how many of you spoke about something that was really passionate for you, and that's why you got here? And several hands go up. I say, don't forget that, because you may not hear me talk about that, but that's what got your bell ringing. And you need to bring that into your discussion, even if it's not what I talk about. So, take the boundaries down, figure out what works for you, and ignite your passion and make it available. Fourth, know that you can make a difference, which actually affects everything. I, in 1996, got involved with GMOs. I did not have a science background. I'm not a doctor. I didn't take science in college. I have a master's of business administration. You know from my lectures more than I knew 18 years ago. There's more ways to reach people now than I had 18 years ago. There's more opportunity now to affect change. Each person here, every person that's been on the panel, people that you see, have had enormous impact. I know I have. I've changed national policies in different countries. I've convinced more people in the world to avoid GMOs probably than anyone else. And it was just doing what I wanted to do with passion over and over again. So I wanted to add that to the mix, to know that you don't need permission to be a world leader. Okay, I give you permission, you can be a world leader. If you needed to hear it, you got it. You have my permission. You have Brian's permission, you have Richard's permission to be world leaders. And you don't need to necessarily have someone else's skill set, because how you do it is based on your passion and your skill. The last thing, which is about GMOs, is connect with us. Sign up for our newsletter so we can stay in touch. I'll be sharing with you all the time about ways that you can connect. And we have materials there, Genetic Roulette. The film is the most powerful conversion tool. Please get that. Share it with 1,000 of your closest personal friends. Please share the newsletter as you get it. If you want to be a speaker, get the speaker training. If you want to be an activist locally, join the Tipping Point Network. Most importantly, avoid GMOs yourself. But that's getting involved in helping yourself and then helping others. All the other stuff really is a bigger life lesson that I'm still learning and enjoying and love to share. Thank you.
Well said. Nobody has to add to that. Good for you. Good stuff.
So